The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Reaper Apparel Company. Reaper Apparel offers a casual line of superb fit, finish, and comfort. We design for those who refuse to die slowly and choose to live untamed. For those who aren't afraid to face the dark, for the ones that thrive in it, and for those who can appreciate life through a grim lens. That's Reaper Apparel Company. Go to the link in the description of this episode, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my own personal merch store, the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. I have hats, I have t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, water bottles, notebooks, you name it, I've got it. The description and the link for that will be in the description of this episode. Also, right now, if you use the promo code WELCOME, I will give you 5% off of your first purchase. That's the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Tactical Brotherhood, all American-made apparel, which helps support the Second Amendment. You can also find all this in the description of this episode with the link, Tactical Brotherhood. Part of every proceed does go to helping veterans, as it is a very good cause. All American-made products made right here in Minnesota. Go and check them out. Use the promo code PATRIOT15 to get 15% off your purchase. Now, let's start the show. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is, as always, your host, Mike Bono. I have a great guest for us today. He has played in the NFL. He has also played for legendary coach Coach Mumme at Kentucky. We're going to get into all of that, but James Whalen joins the show. James, thanks for joining, buddy.
Man, my pleasure, Coach. Occasionally he'll send me a text here and there and said, "Hey, do you mind jumping on with this guy?" And I'm like, "Coach, for you, of course, anything."
Coach Mumme is the best, man. I mean, I have had him on the show a couple of times, and he's great to talk to. So, what's your relationship like now again? With Coach.
He very much is like a father figure to me, and I'm very fortunate to have met him when I did, and the circumstances that I did, and just the work that got put into it, and coming out the other end and the other side and going back, like we have this just level of respect for each other. And people don't really understand the people that were on that staff at Kentucky, and to watch what they have done and stay, tight friends. Sonny Dykes, obviously, taking TCU to national championship game last year. I live in Dallas-Fort Worth, and Sonny, people don't know this. So when I got to Kentucky as a sophomore, I walked on. Sonny and a gentleman named Chris Hatcher, who's the head coach now, were our two, graduate assistants. And my junior year, Sonny left and he got a job at, I believe, Northeast Louisiana as a receivers coach. That was his first full-time gig. And my senior year, Hal hired him back, and he was my position coach as a tight end the year that I was an All-American. And so I spent a lot of time with him, obviously, and he's older than me, but he's really not that much older than me. So we were kind of more friends back then. Him, Mike Leach, obviously, rest in peace. I had stayed close to Mike and his family, Sharon, and for years and years. And, Neil Brown, at West Virginia. I mean, there is a very long tree of people that have done really amazing things that, at the time, nobody would have known and nobody really thought of. Listen, okay. Yeah. I love Leach. He's was an amazing person. Every time somebody talks about the Mike Leach offense, I stop them in their tracks and say, No, sir. That's Hal Mumme. How is the architect? How is the godfather? How is the creator of the air raid system? And I will walk them through the history of it, how Hal got it, what he did to create it, how Mike started writing Hal letters saying, I want to work for you. And finally, after Hal was getting a letter every single day, he finally wrote back and said, I will hire you if you stop writing me letters. So it all goes back to Coach Mumme and the vision that he had, the understanding of what it could be, and where it could go.
Yeah, I mean, we talked extensively about that offense when Coach Mumme was on the show. And even just thinking back to my high school days, I mean, I grew up in West Virginia. We had this just hard-nosed, power-running team for decades there. And then all of a sudden, it was my sophomore year, and they're like, all right, we're going to spread them out, and we're going to run this offense. And it was the air raid offense. Now that I look back at it, I didn't know it at the time. I didn't realize it at the time, but now, when talking with coaches, like, holy crap, I ran that as a sophomore in high school as a receiver.
Yeah.
I loved it. My running backs didn't like it that much. But being a receiver.
Even in Kentucky, like we had a running back, Anthony White, and he was one of the most explosive, best running backs in the league. Now, he didn't get 25 carries a game, but when he got the ball, he made things happen. I mean,
right.
So there were still opportunities within the system. It's just like, so when you talk to him, like he wanted to create something different and he had a vision. So he took the time and he called upon people and, asked for their blessing to come and watch and learn. And, so basically he took what he did was he went and watched Bill Walsh and the 49ers and he picked his brain on the West Coast offense. And then he went and watched LaVell Edwards and he picked his brain, on what they did and he put them together and that became the air raid. He took those two offenses and melded them into what he thought would be the most successful. And, people laugh because to this day, I never saw a playbook. It doesn't exist. Like I thoroughly remember sitting, in Lexington, at a timeout and literally Hal going down and with a bottle cap and saying, okay, this is you, this is in like just ad-libbing and, understanding the concepts and then changing them. And, I think we had probably, maybe 7 pass plays total, but we ran every pass play out of 5 or 6 different formations. Maybe 3 or 4 run plays total, but we ran every run play out of 5 or 6 different formations. And, the whole concept, is if we're really, really, really good at what we do, it doesn't matter what they do. Let's just be perfect at what we do. And we would go out and practice and we'd run a play on a Friday and we might run that same play, just 11 on air, no defense. We might run it 15, 20, 25 times in a row. And when Hal saw it and he knew that was it, he'd say, okay, now we can go to the next one. And so the teams that have a playbook that's that thick that, they haven't ran this particular play since the training camp practice, 18 weeks ago, it's that the whole point, his whole idea is be perfect at what we do. And we're going to disguise it with formations and motions, but we're going to do it perfectly. And the teams that are coming up against us that are going to run a play that they have not practiced in 5 weeks, they're not going to be perfect at it.
Yeah, that's a hell of a scheme, and that's something that, it's still, they just did a big thing on ESPN.com about it, Coach Mumme and the air raid offense, and, it was a great read. But going back to that, so what was like the recruiting process like coming out of high school to then being to the University of Kentucky and with Coach Mumme? What was he like, during that recruiting process?
My story is a little bit different. It's very unique, shall we say. So when I came out of high school, I was a 6'3", 205-pound wide receiver that ran a 5 flat.
Okay.
So I was first team All-State in football, and second team All-State in basketball, and honorable mention All-State in baseball. So, I played all 3 sports. I was really good at all of them, but my body just hadn't really caught up to the growth spurt yet. I knew that I could compete at a very high level. Unfortunately, a lot of people around me didn't. I'll never forget my high school baseball coach, who was our principal, who his son was our starting quarterback. Is the same family that I grew up with playing baseball with, for the last 12 years in the select leagues. So, they knew me well. He was like, James, you're a good athlete. Go to Division III school, play 2 sports, get a good education, and move on with your life. And I'll never forget that. It broke me, because I felt like I was better. And I was being told that I wasn't by somebody that, was a parental figure that had been there forever. And so I ended up going to a junior college in Northern California for a year and played down there. Didn't have a tremendous year. I walked in as a freshman. I got 29 balls, nothing specific, but my dad ended up getting a job transfer to Northern Kentucky to go back and run a plant back there. And he said, we're not really excited about the educational opportunities that you're getting right now. So you got 1 or 2 choices. I said, what's that? He goes, you can stay and go ahead and pay for your own school, or you can come back here, and there's 5 or 6 different schools, whether it's, he goes, Ohio State, Kent State, Kentucky, Tennessee, that are within the area that you can walk on, play football, we'll help you with, and we'll help you pay for school. And I was like, okay. So I was on a plane that next day. And so literally I got off a plane in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'll never forget this, because, there's no humidity on the West Coast. And I'd never been east of Idaho. And I get off this plane, and all of a sudden I'm sweating walking down the tarmac. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, I had never experienced it. I was like, this is the craziest thing in my life. And so I get there, and the first place I went was down in Lexington. I'd done a little bit of research, and I knew that they had this new coach that liked to throw the ball, and they had this quarterback, Tim Couch, that was supposed to be, really good. So I thought, well, maybe they need people to catch the ball. So I went down there and just drove down there myself and walked into the coach's office and got introduced to Claude Bassett, who was the recruiting coordinator at the time, and had me fill out a walk-on card with all my information. And they said that they would get back to me in terms of when the walk-on tryouts would be. And, I was very gracious and I said, thank you. And I went home, and, 2 days passed. I don't hear anything. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, nothing. So the next week I was like, you know what? I was like, screw that. I was like, I'm better than a freaking name on the card. So I got back in the car, drove back down to Lexington, which is about an hour, because they're in northern Kentucky, which is just south of Cincinnati. It's a pretty short drive. So I drive down there, and I walk back into the coach's office, and the door's open, but there's nobody there. Like, literally, I'm yelling, like, hello, hello. And finally, this guy pops his head out, and he walks around the corner, and it's Coach Mumme, and he's like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I was here last week. I brought some tape. I was like, I think I'm better than the name on a card. He goes, oh, well, I'm the head coach. I'm like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And I was like, where's everybody at? And he's like, well, this is the off week, so everybody's on vacation. I just happened to stop in to grab some mail. And I was like, oh, I got film. And he goes, let's go watch it. I'm like, okay. So we walked back into one of the offices, put the film on, and he watched it. He goes, I don't have any scholarships, but yeah, you're on the team. Come on. Okay. And then I just kept working and kept working and kept working. And so I went from a walk-on to my senior year. I caught 90 balls for over 1,000 yards and a consensus All-American.
Oh, that's a hell of a story. I'll tell you that. That's awesome.
Literally, he just happened to be there to go in and get his mail.
Hey, I've always said with stuff like that, being a comedian myself, I always said, I'd rather be lucky than good. And, doing shows and people are like, well, how do you still do these bar shows? You've been doing stand up for 11 years. Like, shouldn't you just be focusing on like comedy clubs and theaters and going that route? I was like, no, I mean, it's stage time for me. One, it's my quote unquote practice, if you will, going back to, an athletic, that's my practice time. And plus, who knows, some big promoter might be at the bar that I'm performing at and, really like my stuff and kind of like what you had with Whalen Mumme. And then, okay, now I got more jobs just from going to a bar, doing a stupid 10-minute set, working out some new jokes. And then who knows, it's always, I've always said, starting out in comedy, I don't need to perform in front of hundreds of people. I need to perform in front of the right people. And you had that opportunity with Coach Mumme. You got that right person that gave you a shot. And, hey, it worked out. So were there any, like, memorable moments when you were at Kentucky? I mean, you said you played with Tim Couch, I mean, that's a hell of a name to play. You were an All-American. Any memorable moments from, like, either the Outback Bowl or the Music City Bowl or anything like that?
I mean, I couldn't, there's a lot, probably a couple. So Hal says, yes, you're on the team, come out. Right. And I'm still this kid that I'm about as green as you're going to be. And, I've most of these guys that are on the team, right. They've been through this recruiting process. They've gone to other big schools. They're hell, Couch was, I think, the year before, because we're the same age. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year. These guys have a lot of these guys have been in much bigger arenas and moments than I have. But I was still pretty cocky and confident in what I could do. So before training camp started, the players would go out and do 7-on-7 linebackers, DBs against receivers and quarterbacks, etc. And the rules, there weren't any coaches there. It was just the offense versus the defense, and it was just kind of a personal install. And I'll never forget, and God bless him, amazing player, Jeff Settiger. So one of the last days before camp, we're out there, in the afternoon, and it's hot. It gets hot, and it's sticky in Lexington, being in Ohio, right? But it's just, just shoulder pad, or not even shoulder pad, it's just shorts. Just that's it. It's just us. It's 7-on-7. And I just run a little 5-yard out route, catch the ball. But I literally, when I looked down at my feet, I was half a yard from the goal line. So I'm like, okay, we're done. So I just go to step over the goal line. And Jeff Settiger comes up and absolutely just lays me out. And he stands over me and he looks at me and pardon my language, he says, "Welcome to the SEC, bitch." And I'll never forget that, because ever since then, my entire response to life is don't be unprepared.
Yeah.
I just thought, I caught the ball, okay, the journey's over, even though I hadn't completed it. And he reminded me that I hadn't finished the journey. And he did it in a way that Jeff could only do. But it's just, I will never forget that. And that's a memory that will always, always, always stick with me, because the next memory will kind of piggyback off that. We were playing, my senior year, we were playing Mississippi State. And that's when ESPN had just started Thursday night games. Yeah. Which was kind of a big deal, because at the time that was the only college game on. It was something new. It was fresh. Everybody loved it. They it was kind of like Monday Night Football for college football.
Right.
And Mississippi State was ranked, and we were ranked doing, very well that year. And it got late in the game, and there was a key third down. Somehow there was a timeout, and I'll never forget, we're sitting in the huddle, and I think Dusty Bonner, who was our quarterback at the time, because Tim was now gone, he was in the NFL. So Dusty was off to the sideline, and we're all sitting there talking, and Anthony White, who was our starting running back, who had been our starting running back for years, said, well, I don't care what we do, just throw it to James. And I kind of looked up, and he's like, well, you got us here. And so to go from the kid that was welcome to the SEC bitch to the kid that said, you got us here, that those two moments sort of, I don't know, it's just talk about a level of accomplishment, because it was an accomplishment for my peers.
Yeah, that's amazing that, those two stories correlate like that, from being welcomed to the SEC.
Let's face it, unwanted.
Yeah.
To saying you're the guy. And it's not from anybody other than your teammates that have been there to bleed with you. So that is the greatest compliment that I've ever been given.
Yeah, those are amazing stories, and I'm glad you shared those with us. So, you're finishing up your college career. Football's done. Now we're going into the NFL. I mean, you've played for the Bucs, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Bengals, and also in the NFL Europe. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that process and how that went for some of our listeners out there?
Just like going through the recruiting process to go to the combine. Well, I should say, because I didn't go through the recruiting process, this was kind of all new to me, but to be able to go to the combine and compete there, I knew that my skill set was a little bit different. And, I wasn't the 260-pound tight end that was going to, be able to block and, do all the things that some coaches wanted. I was more of a hybrid, but I got a phone call, and it was Coach Dungy saying, do you want to come be a part of our team? I said, you're damn right. And he said, okay, good. There's playing. We'll see you tomorrow. So I get down there, and, I walk in the locker room for the first time, and I'm just looking around the lockers, and, there's Warren Sapp and Brad Johnson and, Work Dunn, Brooks, you name it. I mean, Hall of Famers that, really, really good players. And unfortunately, I ended up tearing my hamstring the very first 5 minutes of the very first training camp practice in the NFL that I was ever a part of. And I pretty much missed the whole thing. And Tony calls me in, on the last day, and he goes, James, he goes, I want to keep you. I really think you got some potential. He goes, but we don't have the film to prove that, we can do that. And I said, I understand. And, to anybody and everybody, if you ever get the opportunity to, or I should say, go make it a point to get the opportunity to go meet Tony Dungy, because you'll be a better person because of it. I mean, he's an amazing individual. I was very, very fortunate to have the time to know him that I did. So I go back to my apartment, and I'm like, okay, this is new. I'm a man with no team. I have no idea. Well, about an hour later, my phone rings, and I answer it, and it's Jerry Jones calling me from his plane. And so I start talking to Jerry, and next thing I know, next day I'm in Dallas. Now I was on the practice squad because he's like, we don't have any spots. We're going to put you in the practice squad. That was, it was different back then because you wouldn't be considered on the active roster. I was like, I'm there. So I show up, and then the first thing I walk into there at that time, Troy Aikman was the quarterback. Emmitt Smith was the running back. So it's just getting to know these guys, Rocket was there. Joey was there. Dat Wynn, Dexter Coakley, and I can go on and on. Flozell, who I still, most of those guys I still talk to, now. But it was just the first time I ever got into a huddle with Troy, I realized real fast who's in charge. And it isn't Jerry, and it wasn't the coaching. It was Troy. That was his huddle, and you better shut up and listen. And he's not afraid to tell you exactly what he wants you to know.
That sounds accurate. Like that doesn't surprise me in the least. Like he just has.
Well, I'll tell you a story about him in a minute, but yes.
I would say, that sounds like a commanding presence, and it kind of leads me into this what I wanted to talk about. I mean, I believe it was in 2002 when you were playing for the Cowboys, you were actually featured on NFL Hard Knocks as their preview. So, what was that like? Just that experience, and then we can get into Troy.
Hard Knocks was. I mean, it was. I don't know if I was featured per se in it, yes, but. It's just one of those, you do it because you're supposed to do it, but you can't take don't focus on it. Don't even make it a thing, because the amount of work and effort and mental function that you need to be focused on training camp and, far supersedes anything that camera can do for you. Because at the end of the day, if you're not performing on the field, you're really nothing to them off the field. And so the whole point is when you're there, like, okay, yeah, smile and wave. But I mean, you got a job to do, right? And you got to be professional, and you have to be professional in terms of doing your job, both to the media, and to yourself and your teammates.
Absolutely. I mean, I always wondered, seeing, Hard Knocks becoming what it is today with, everybody being excited about being the teams that are being on Hard Knocks, how that affected the players, in training camp. But,
No player wants it there. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, we're there to work. I mean, that's at the end of the day. To grind, to get better, to make a team, to get ready to go. And, hopefully try and win a championship. And, I get it, right? I mean, the money is the money, and the money is the media. It's just what it is. So, I mean, telling the story and highlighting the story and that's all part of it. But the sole purpose of each and every one of us athletes is to go to work.
Right.
I mean, first and foremost.
That's what I don't think a lot of people understand. Like they see it as, oh, well, they're playing a game. Like, no, that's a job. That's a career for everybody that's out on that field. And just like in any career, that job could go away like that. I've worked in sales since I graduated from college. And, if I don't perform and get my numbers where they need to be, they'll just move on to the next salesman that's in line, So like there's always like that's a job and that's a career path for everybody that's on there. Not just the 53 men that are on the active roster, but there's practice squad guys that are trying to get the active roster guys ready and to prepare themselves if, God forbid, one of those guys go down. They're probably next in line to come up. So I don't think a lot of people understand that. And
Here's how I can somewhat liken it. My dad he worked for the same company for 40 years. Started 25 out of college, has a master's degree, and he started in a stock deal. Worked for an international steel company. Well, he ended up as a VP, and it took 40 years to get to that point.
Right.
And I tell him, and he knows this. I was like, Dad, I played 4. If I got lucky and got to 6, my 6 years would have equaled your 40. And not only from a monetary standpoint, but from a stress standpoint.
Yeah.
just to hang on, because I had people trying to fire me every single day. And they will tell you that every single day. Every day. They're looking for somebody to replace you.
Absolutely. I get it, but now I want to circle back. I got to hear this Troy Aikman story that you were talking about. So
we were playing. So it would have been, I guess, 03, my last year for the Cowboys. We were playing at the Rams, and we got there. I always like to kind of walk out and go on the field early and go out there with the quarterbacks or whatever, and just kind of look around, get to know the stadium. And I'm coming down the tunnel, and I hear this voice is Whalen. And I stopped and I turned behind me, and it was Troy. And I guess he was calling the game that day for Fox. And I said, "Hey, how are you?" He goes, "When the fuck are you going to do something?" I said, "Huh?" He said, "When are you going to do something?" I said, "Well, tell him to throw me the ball." I had my best game. I caught 5 balls in that game. I need him to call more people.
That's amazing.
But that was I think 2 years after he retired. And I was just walking down the tunnel. That's how much he cares. He knows.
Right.
When are you gonna do something? I'm like, well, tell him to throw me the ball.
And they did, and you made it happen for that game.
I love it. It's so fun. Then we finally started. So the NFL has some teams, and the Raiders are the best at it, from my understanding, have a really good alumni. It's the team that pulls the alumni together. And the Raiders once a year, they bring in every former player. They fly them in to a home game, put them at a hotel, give them a golf outing, and then take them to a game. And I've always heard about this. And, I mean, they really look after their former players. Well, with the Cowboys this far, I mean, I haven't really seen a lot of that. Well, we started doing some stuff about a year and a half ago. And so we got to a point, and right now it's just Troy and Emmett started putting some stuff on. There's been 3 different events. Our next event is on the 15th of this month for just a Monday night game. But the last one I went to, the third one, we had guys flying in from Florida, LA, Michigan. I mean, T.O. was there. Lori Glover showed up. I mean, guys from all over the country, just to come in. That's, hors d'oeuvres, and free drinks at a restaurant bar in Dallas. And so I'm hoping that, from an alumni standpoint, it will continue to grow and we can get Jerry involved more and more. And, hopefully we can all, get opportunity to get together more, because it's not enough. We don't get the opportunity to get together enough.
Right. Yeah. You hear about stuff like that from different teams, and I've heard about that from the Raiders. Yeah, they bring in the alumni. I didn't know if every team did that, but the Raiders was the one.
The only one that I've heard of that does it is the Raiders. And the guy that's putting it on for the Cowboys, I was talking to him not long ago, and he was like, well, the whole point is if we can get enough guys, that are going to keep coming and keep doing, it'll catch Jerry, and then Jerry will start paying for it.
There you go.
Because right now, Troy and Emmett are paying for it out of their own pocket, which is, I appreciate it. And I don't mind chipping in, but I mean, it's like, I would love the Cowboys alumni to be supported by the Cowboys.
Right. Absolutely. So, with all that being said, you're retired from the NFL. So what's life like now, and what are you doing now?
Man, I got a 16-year-old daughter who I have to go to teen court with next week because she got a speeding ticket. She is a wonderful, God bless her, I love her. A 7th grader who's playing football, just being a dad. It's just normal life.
Okay. I definitely get that. I got a teenager myself. Just started freshman year, JV football. Had some eligibility issues and, a couple concussion issues this year, but he's a lineman. I wish I wish somebody who, I grew up playing football and everything like that, but I was a receiver. I mean, I graduated high school at 6'5", 155 pounds. I wasn't the biggest specimen. My son at 14 is bigger.
6'5", 155. You were a stick.
Yeah, I was. I was a stick, and they used me sparingly. It was, hey, you're playing West Virginia football. Nobody in the state is over the height of 5'9". You're 6'5". When we get in the red zone, that's your time to shine. We're just going to toss it up and hope you can go and get it. But my son now, 14, he's 6 foot 250, and so
that's a big boy.
He's my little tank, and I gotta teach him not to lead with his head. Like, that's basically what I'm doing. Yeah. Like, dude, this isn't 7th and 8th grade ball or Pee Wee ball anymore. You're not the biggest kid on the team anymore. You can't just run over people. But it's a work in progress. He got through his first full JV high school season, so he's pretty pumped about that.
You know what they see what you hit.
Yeah.
If you can always see what you hit, then you're in a good, safe place.
That's trying to beat that into his head, and it's tough because he's 14 and he knows everything. So
yeah. Well, what's funny for me is, so like my kids. So we're in Aledo, Texas. Last year they won another state champ. Like, they have the most state championships of any school in the history of the state of Texas. And it's just a powerhouse. I mean, JoJo Earl, the running back at Alabama. I mean, I can go down. I mean, it's just they just produce all these players. And, my son, his name's William, and it's kind of not his thing. But so many parents, kind of live vicariously through their kids. And I told Wade, I was like, listen, dude, I was like, I've got my own memories. I was like, I want you to make yours. If football's not yours, that's fine. It's okay. I'm going to support you in any way you want to go. And what's crazy is he loves to race.
Okay.
He loves dirt bikes and motocross and the RZRs and all that stuff, and it's trying to figure out how to get him, more involved in that. And it's just from a parent standpoint, it's like I didn't grow up with that. I don't know what that is. So it's like, you bob and weave. It's like, okay, well, here's a football, here's a basketball, like here's a steering wheel. Like, I don't get that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's got to be tough. I'm a huge racing fan, so hopefully one day I'll be sitting there watching him race. Because it's awesome. So hopefully we can get that.
He was so excited to tell me that he was able to trade his dirt bike for another dirt bike because it was this and that, and he kept telling me all the specs, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but are you happy? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool.
I get that way all too much, but James, we are running down near the end of the episode here. I do have to get this last segment in here, and it is the Fast Fitty 5. 5 random questions from the wonderful manager of the podcast, Johnny Fitty Falcone. And, these have nothing to do with what we've been talking about this entire time. They're the most random things in the world. Kind of rapid fire, but you can elaborate if you need to. So if you are ready, we'll go ahead.
Can't wait.
Okay, and my husky is excited too, as well, as you could hear in the background. So, question number 1, favorite month of the year?
December.
Okay. Question number 2, who's tougher, rugby players or pro boxers?
Rugby.
I'd have to agree with that one. Yeah, that's a brutal sport. Question number 3, which do you prefer for weather, the rain or the snow?
Snow. If it's going to be cold, it might as well snow.
I'm with you on that one. And if it's going to snow, I don't want a dusting. Like, that shut the town down type of snow. That's where I'm at. Question number 4, what's the best day to do laundry?
Yesterday.
Okay. Question number...
Gotcha.
probably one of the best answers we've had on this segment so far. There are different questions every time, but this is that was by far the best answer I've had in 3 years of doing this segment. So question number 5: washing a car, is it boring or relaxing?
It sucks. That's what car washes are for.
Yeah, I gotta say, I enjoy washing my car, my truck. So I can't. I don't know why. My dad always used to do it, and he liked it, and they just carried over to me. I don't know why, but yeah, I enjoy washing the cars.
That's fun.
Yeah, but that was the Fast 55. I feel like he took it a little easy on you on these ones. I mean, we've had some weird ones though. I mean, the mind of Johnny Fitty Falcone with these questions, like.
I mean, keep going. I'm not scared.
That's what I tell him. I was like, dude, just come up with the most random things because he's all.
I mean, I said December because that's my birthday.
Okay.
I mean, well, what was the other question?
The
second one?
The second one, that was, who's tougher, rugby or pro boxers?
Well, yeah, because rugby, because it's consistent. Like, it's not like they don't stop. I mean, and the whole running, like I've always said in the NFL, if you want to get concussions out of the game, just take the face mask off. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. You're not going to hit with your head if you don't have a face mask.
It's very true. Never thought of it that way.
I mean, that's it. Just take the face mask off. You take it off, you're a lot of concussions are gonna go away because you're not gonna leave with your face with no face mask.
It's fair. I never thought of it that way. That's a beautiful point. That is. Oh wow!
But those guys are doing that without face masks. I mean, they're tough.
Yeah, they are. I got a buddy that's an amateur rugby player, and I give him all the credit in the world for doing that sport. It's brutal. But James, I feel like I could sit here and talk to you all night, but we are running down near the end of the episode here, and I do give every guest this opportunity at the end of the show. So I'm going to give you about a minute. If there's anything you want to get out there, whether it's just a good message or anything that you got going on that you want to promote, the floor is yours.
Man, with everything going on in the world, first of all, I just want to say thank you that I'm so blessed that I've got 2 wonderful kids that are healthy and doing well with their education and moving forward. And I'm very, very, very fortunate that they have the opportunity to do the things that we've been given here. And, with what's going on in the world with Israel and with Hamas, I just pray for a lot of people over there. I pray for Israel and pray for their people. And I know that that's not what this sport is, but, in times like this, my heart is with that country, and I pray for their people.
Hey, you know what? I love when people have messages like that at the end of the show. Yes, I'm all for helping anybody that comes on the show, promote and get anything out there that they can, but I love it when it's a good message like that. And James, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This was a lot of fun to sit and talk to you, but that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. Again, I want to thank my guest, James Whalen, and as always, for all the new listeners out there, if you enjoyed the show, be a friend, tell a friend. If you didn't, tell them anyways. They might like it just because you didn't. That's going to do it for me, and I will see y'all next week. The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Dubby Energy. Energy drinks made for gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. For gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. Go to the link in the description where you can find the best energy drinks out there. Less caffeine than a cup of coffee. Also, no jitters and no crash afterwards. Use the promo code Mike Bono and get yourself 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my favorite sponsor of the show, and that is Shankit Golf. Golf apparel made for the everyday golfer. We might not go out and shoot a 6 under par. We're probably going to shoot a 6 over par, but this is going to give us the gear that's going to help us rock it on and off of the course. Go to the link in the bio, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get yourself 10% off there as well.